Good evening, Moogles. It's the Schwantz 27, and we've got another Final Fantasy VI Worlds Collide randomizer race for you tonight. On the ones and twos, behind the scenes, pushing all the buttons, making the things happen. Saberwolf still battling some COVID, so thank you so much, Saberwolf, for doing that. We also have Cheech on the tracking tonight, so thank you so much for doing that, because that will help keep myself and my co-commentator, Arusta, will keep our heads on straight. Arusta, how are you doing tonight?
I am doing very, very well. I'm looking forward to this race. I don't know a whole lot about this race, but I have heard it is very interesting to watch along. So coming in unspoiled, and it should be really interesting. So looking forward to seeing this and commentating alongside you, Schwantz.
Yeah, so we're in Ultros League Season 7. This is Week 6, so we just finished Week 6. This is the Potion C division. So Ultros League happens every so often during the year, and there are 8 weeks of Ultros League. You keep the top 6 scores that you accrue. So at this point now, with Weeks 7 and 8 coming up, that is when we'll start to see jockeying for position as to what races can be dropped. And we'll see from our runners here tonight what type of shenanigans they get into with this particular seed. So I also heard some interesting things about this. I didn't hear much other than it was a close one, and it was a bit of a doozy. So hopefully that will be all that we get to know here. And wow, we've got all default blue and white trims as we are off and running here. Saberwolf, Yakko Wacko, Nobody War, Gigavram, starting off Sketchlock, Jump Shadow, and Rage Realm are our characters here. We already got the Ninja Rage, the Doom Durgan Rage, so a couple of good rages we see here, Saberwolf going through. Bleary is decent for Doom if you really need to. Brontor is Fire 3, so that's another nice one there as well. Meanwhile, we do get fixed dice from Yakko Wacko, going to pick up the Gal Manor check right off the bat there. Not an Esper or a character, just an item. And we'll see who could use those fixed dice.
Yeah, and I really like picking up that check early. It's a very, very easy check, very quick to get to. You can also check the merchant while you're there, and with 5,000 gold, odds are, if you see anything useful, you'll be able to afford it, because that's mostly an item shop. So I really like that as a first check there by Yakko Wacko.
We did see that both Locke and Shadow can equip those fixed dice. Magus hats in the shop there for Gigavram. Everybody can use that. Plus 5 magic power for your team. You also got Dragoon Boots and an Ice Shield in the shed, and a Ragnarok in the shop. Wow, we are off and running in this particular seed. We haven't even checked the Norse weapon shop yet, Arusta.
Yeah, I would expect we'll probably see that pretty quickly. The Norse weapon shop is a good early check, and yep, we're about to see it right here. Probably also see them check the Paladin Shield here, because when you're getting at this super early in the seed, there's a good chance you'll be able to uncurse it before too far, even if it's a decently high number. Ooh, and that is a good choice and offering, which is going to go very well with those fixed dice. As well, the Minerva is a nice second option. Maybe it's something, if they find Terra, they will pick up that as well from the other Narsh Welk spot.
So it looks like Shadow can also use the Ragnarok that's in that weapon shop. I saw that on Gigavram's screen. But yeah, I wonder how many people will choose the Minerva because they don't know that the fixed dice is at Gal Manor. It looks like Saberwolf did end up choosing the offering there. That's an interesting call. I might have just rolled the dice and went with the Minerva for the defensive ability, obviously not knowing that I had some fixed dice there, because with the offering, there's only a handful of weapons that it really, really helps with. And Nobody War pulls a Minerva out of a chest and returns hideout, so then I'd be double kicking myself. Wow.
Yeah, and one thing to note as well with Locke here, you mentioned there's only a few items that are great with the offering. However, Locke can equip several of them naturally. The Valiant Knife, I believe he can also equip the Sniper, which is a nice alternate. So, there's a good chance someone will be able to use that offering if you find any sort of item.
Yeah, that's a great point. I didn't really think about the other weapon equipability with the characters that we've got. So, with the characters that we have, Arusta, we do have a couple of checks available to us that do have some fights in there. We have the Floating Continent, we have Owzer's Mansion, so I would expect our runners maybe to gravitate towards those as sort of the first checks. We also have the South Figaro Cave, where there's a nice healing pond right outside, so you can grind and hit the heal bucket too. So a couple of different options here. If you were running this seed, which one of those would you choose?
So I would probably go with Owzer's Mansion, because I think a couple people have found there was a fire rod in one of the chests somewhere that I saw a couple people pick up. And with that fixed dice offering, you've got ways to get past a boss. Those are guaranteed fights. And, Floating Continent is great to have, but I don't think it's a good early check, because if you get 2 in and then you get, 1 in and you get stuck, you can't beat the boss, whatever, you can really get hard-walled there. It's a lot of time loss if you just can't get through it.
Yeah, it's a bit of a high-risk, high-reward play there as well. So, question from the chat, have we seen the rage list? So Saberwolf was kind enough to go through some of the rages that we had. We did have access to Brontor, which is Fire 3. We had Doom Dragon, which is M Cross. We did also have Great Behemoth, which is Meteor, if we need that in a pinch for non-elemental AoE. So there's a couple of good ones in there as well. I did not see what the Cursed Shield count was. I know we had talked about it. But,
it was 12, and I believe Saberwolf just sold it off at 12. 12 is kind of right at the level where we're shaky about it. It's, especially since I don't believe we've seen either a ribbon or a peace ring. If you had that, so you can keep them at least somewhat productive. Oh, there's a peace ring. So, if you can get something out of your character, that's better. But if you didn't have anything, that's a lot to just have a useless character.
Yeah, I think Thunder Shield, so another elemental shield, especially with that Ice Shield we found and now the Thunder Shield we found, it puts a little bit less emphasis on getting that Paladin Shield online, especially with having that Minerva as well. So we almost have Merton protection, and we're 5 minutes and 25 seconds into the seed here already, which is kind of wild.
Yeah, and Saberwolf doing the Runed Narsh check, I kind of like, if you're going to flip through, I kind of like sometimes doing this, especially if you happen to be in the world of Rune already, because it seems like a lot of people will go to one or the other. So Rune Narsh can sometimes get you an advantage if you can find something other people don't see. It's also easier to get to the weapon shop, or the item shop. Yeah,
so Yakko Wacko doing a bit of an interesting strategy here. Takes off the Moogle Charm and is going for a walk on the Veldt. Just a casual, leisurely stroll. Needs to get his steps in here on his Fitbit. The interesting thing about this is he knows he's going to fight Lobo the entire time, so it's basically a one-hit kill in order to uncurse the shield. The downside is, on the Veldt, you don't earn any XP ever. So he's going to be taking, 12 or so battles, probably less, to uncurse the shield at the expense of not being able to gain any XP here. This is a very interesting strategy. I don't know if I would do this, just because it's a lot of time that you sink into uncursing the shield, where you could be doing things like taking off the Moogle Charm to loot the South Figaro basement if you're going to go do that anyway. But this guarantees that these fights are going to be very, very easy. So interesting strategy here.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting strategy. One thing to note is with Locke, you do have access, as we mentioned earlier, to the South Figaro Cave, where you can do the fights may be harder than Lobo, but you can heal right there, and it's experience. So that might be an alternative. If someone at home is thinking about, hey, what could I do to uncurse the shield? That's always a good option too, because you get experience through that.
Yeah, but as you mentioned, if you take one wrong step and you get a level magic grouping and they just wipe you out in one AoE spell, you just lost all that time. So it's risk reward sort of thing here. How crazy do we want to get? We do have Gig of Ram here in Thamasa, so this is close to another one of Realm's checks, Esper Mountain, so we'll see if they decide to end up going that way. Thamasa is a pretty small town. It's got 6 treasure chests in there, and it's not a very long walk to each of the shops, so I like popping my head in here every now and again just to see what we've got.
Yeah, and it's also a very convenient town if you're already planning on doing realms checks, or even more, especially if you have Strago and plan on doing the burning house check, because you end up there anyways. Because it's very, very close to the checks, so it's not out of your way.
All right, so our runners are still trying to figure out exactly what type of equipment we got. We also have a red jacket that we pulled out, so definitely now looking for a Esper with Merton on it. I don't believe we had any rages that had Merton on it either, although the rage list is kind of hard to see sometimes unless you're in battle. There's so many gaps in the actual menu here. And it looks like Nobody War is going to go ahead and take the Moogle Charm off and just say, hey, I'm right outside of Gal Manor. Let's just go ahead and take care of this now. To Zen Thief, I think that was 47,000, and I didn't quite see if that was an Esper or not. Even at the potion level, people are menuing way too fast for me to tell sometimes. It's wild how talented some of the runners are here in the community.
Yeah, absolutely. And as well, however, I will note that if you're seeing this and you're intimidated by the skill level, you don't need to be, because there are multiple levels in Ultros League. So, if you're newer to the game, you end up in a lower tier. And then as you get better, you end up at higher tiers. There is also, we have, I believe, a mentor program where people will help watch your VOD if you need requests. Or I believe the Moogle Cup, which is, something that happens every so often where we pair some newer runners with more experienced runners and get some tips as you run the seed. So it's a great way to get involved, get started if you're new to the game.
All right, so there was also an Ice Shield in Thamasa that I missed the first time around. So we are well protected and kitted out, folks, for this particular seed. Did get word from the chat from our eagle-eyed tracker, thank you, Cheech, again, for tracking, that it wasn't not an Esper at Zen Thief. So a bunch of dead checks already between the Norse Weapon Shop and Gal Manor and Zen. So in these types of seeds, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to get any help from the dead checks. It looked like Yakko Wacko was trying to dig in a monster in a box to look for maybe another offering, question mark. Once you have one, I think you're pretty good, but hey, you never know what's going to come out later in the seed, right?
Yeah, and the one thing to note is this early in the seed, there are probably a couple that would be useful to have. You're still early enough. You could use some money. So if you find the aloe vera, you can instantly kill it for 10,000 gold from selling the tiger fangs. Or you've got stuff like the four ghosts that you kill with Phoenix Downs or Revivify. Those give pretty good experience. There's also, of course,
the best experience. Yeah.
Though, depending on where you're at, Gigantos can be surprisingly difficult early in the seed because he actually does a decent amount of damage.
Yeah, that's for sure. All right, so Nobody War unfortunately had to run away from a Dark Force encounter, and that is a Thunder Shield there, much cheaper in the world of Ruin at barely under 5,000 GP. Yakko Wacko now is heading into the cave on the Veldt, digging in another monster in a box here. We'll see if he gets a decent reward. This will just drop him a Hyper Wrist, which unfortunately won't help with the fixed dice, because the fixed dice, the damage is just based on the rolls on the dice and none of the relics or anything else you got to get. It is a pretty fast way to take that out, though, and unfortunately his party is still all level 3, so either he'll have to take off the Moogle Charm and get some levels, or he's just going to use that fixed dice and hope that the fixed dice offering can get him through that. Because believe it or not, that is a very, very powerful early game build here.
Yeah, and the other thing to note is if you get desperate, you can, especially with the amount of shields they have, breaking a shield early or breaking a rod early can do a lot of damage. You can often, if you do it at the very first level 3 boss, you can very easily potentially one-shot a boss by just breaking the shield. So that's an option as well.
Yeah, I bet Strago's ears were ringing. We were talking about him earlier, and here he is, Cave on the Veldt. So Yakko Wacko is going to have his 4th character if he can get through this boss. Now, if he can't get through this boss, at least he knows where a character is. Unfortunately, the character is Strago, and his checks are some of the least desirable in the entire game.
Yeah, I mean, this early, something like Burning House isn't bad. It's my personal least favorite check in the game, but a lot of people like it. But you do get the battles on the way. And then, you've got the guaranteed progression at Fanatic's Tower, though until you have a reliable means of casting magic, that's just not really an option, because you do have the same as in vanilla, ban on using abilities that aren't magical.
Yeah, we can use those, as you mentioned, though, those shields and some of the rods that we found could be potentially on the table. Let me ask you a question here, Arusta. With that Ragnarok in a shop so early, does that sort of extend your looting a little bit so that you can get more stuff in order to sell more stuff, in order to afford that Ragnarok, or do you just come back for it later?
I think in this case in particular, where you already have offering fixed dice, you've got a bunch of shields to break, I would say no to specifically trying to go out of my way to buy it as immediately. I think I would maybe open a few more chests as I walk by, maybe take a little longer before I go and ignore all chest mode. But in other cases where you're desperate for abilities or desperate for early offense, getting a Ragnarok early can really break open the seed. So I think here we've got enough other options, but I definitely don't blame Nobody War for buying it early like that, because that can be a huge benefit.
Yeah, and you also are now saying to yourself, well, that is lock solved or Shadow, whoever you decide wants to use that Ragnarok. That's that character solved for the rest of the seed. I don't have to worry about it ever again, right? There's some brain power that goes into just shutting it off and saying, I'm done with this character for now. We'll make sure that we get a Strength plus Esper if we've got one, and we're done with them. So
yeah, and especially with they found a decent variety of good armors, which normally isn't a big deal, but with a Ragnarok, you do need to be in the front row. And so there's been not just the Minerva, but a bunch of other big armors with good physical defense, which is surprisingly important if you're going to keep them in the front row the entire seed.
Yeah, really, really good point there. But between the Genji armors, red jackets, force armors, and all the shields you got, I have a weapon for sale for Yakko Wacko there in the World of Ruin Thamasa weapon shop, as if we didn't have enough goodies to buy. Meanwhile, Nobody War is going on the choo-choo train here at Esper Mountain, and Saberwolf digging into the Owser's Mansion, which is the check that you had mentioned you would go first. I tend to incline to agree with you as well. This would probably be my first choice. So we'll see what's at the end for Saberwolf. That's an imp sprite there at the bottom of Fanatic's Tower. So unless we really need an Esper, we probably won't be seeing that ever again. And Nobody War did take out the Phantom Train, did get an Esper, so that's the first one of the seed for us. And we're now officially we're going to be doing checks mode. So the action is going to come at us real fast now. Oh, there you go. Merton, boom. Seed solved on Siren. Wow. That's wild.
Yeah, I mean, in that case, the Ragnarok's still great and you don't regret having it, but honestly, you might even just decide to roll with Merton for most of the seed and for your long-term play, because it's just so much more damage, even than a single target Ragnarok.
Yeah, so unfortunately, the thing with Merton is it's at a 1x learn rate. So would you be thinking about heading up a dragon or two in order to have one of your characters learn that immediately, right? You're not going to get progression from a dragon, but if you take 2 dragons, then your character learns Merton, and then all of the other fights will go a lot faster from then on out.
I absolutely would, especially with Nobody War already having the Ragnarok and then fixed dice, so you can get the Merton on Realm, because she's got naturally high magic power. Then the other 2 can do their physical attacks, because physical attacks also benefit quite a bit from the levels you get from the dragon.
Yeah, so Cheech pointing out that Esper, I think, had Fire 3 and Ultima on it, so just ridiculously powerful Esper there that Nobody War dug out early. We're also doing Ebbets Rock here from Narapa, and it's early enough in the seed where Narapa runs out of MP trying to cast Condemn. Gotta love when that happens, and Reflect is not going to be a problem for this party with those fixed dice there. This shouldn't last very much longer here. That's what happens sometimes when when you don't get any free progression, right? The bosses will scale based on your progression. If you don't get any, they're just at level 6, which is not very high. Oh, here comes a spicy play from Gig of Ram, diving into the Phoenix Cave.
I'm actually a big fan of early Phoenix Cave if you're willing to do if you do it early, because there's a lot of chests you can get along the way. It does get you a lot. The one thing, of course, is if you're doing it early like this, you are basically guaranteeing you're never doing that dragon. So it is the trade-off there, but there are other easier dragons to get if you decide later in the seed you want some levels.
Yeah, so Yakko there does pick up an Esper for themselves. It was a pretty horrible Esper. I think there was like four support magics on it. Haste 2 is probably the only thing I would even bother looking at once or twice. Nobody War, meanwhile, taking out Guardian. I believe this is at the South Figaro Cave. So this would have been a very tough boss if somebody went here just immediately first. So thankfully he learned a few spells there in order to take out Guardian for yet another Esper. So that's Crusader in the pocket there. And it looks like Yakko Wacko's going to follow in those footsteps. So for the dragon here, I think I would still do it even with a party of 2 instead of a party of 3, just because I've got that fixed ice, right? I know that you would rather have a dragon with your entire party, but if you have the ability to do it, you might as well do it, and you'll get not only a second check, because remember, you do have 22 checks for Kefka Tower Skip, which is the green imp notification we've got on screen now. So this is really a 2 checks in one spot type of scenario. So I don't know if that plays into it at all, Arusta.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would play into a little bit. I actually kind of like Gig of Ram, or excuse me, Nobody War. I like Nobody War doing the dragon here where you get the entire party. But, I mean, there's a lot of options. Really, right now, the seed is quite open. You have a lot of ways you can take it.
Yeah, we have pretty ridiculous power early on. All right, so Saberwolf does get through the 3 Stooges at the end of Bowser's Mansion, so that also is not a fun fight early on in the seed. But our runners are taking care of things here. And is going to get Ifrit for that, so we'll put an Esper up on the board for them. So I'm sorry about that. And then we've got our Ice Dragon here, but thankfully we have Fire 3. So we'll melt this puppy, and then we'll be on our way to Whirling Rim. Alright, so that's Guardian down for Yakko Wacko, so that'll be their next Esper there. First dragon for Nobody War with an Atma weapon as the reward. The rich will just get richer this seed, huh?
Yeah, I mean, and that's even something, since you're already going to be in the front row for Ragnarok. I think if you really wanted to, put on a Genji glove, you could do that, or you could do fixed dice Atma weapon offering. Take forever, but do a ton of damage.
Yeah. That is, put the controller down and come back after a bathroom break. Speaking of bathroom breaks, it's Floating Continent time for Saberwolf here. So he decided enough is enough. We're going to go to where 2 guaranteed pieces of progression are at the Floating Continent: Arrive and Escape. Meanwhile, Gig of Ram gets Starlit out of the Phoenix Cave with Mute on that Esper. So that'll be really nice for them to have Mute for Final Kefka, and who knows how many of the other runners will be going into the Phoenix Cave to get that Esper. So huge advantage there for Gig of Ram.
Yeah,
although now that I think about it, there wasn't Siren here at Esper Mountain, so maybe that's not as big of an advantage as I thought it was.
Yeah, I think Siren is the one that they've got that had all the good stuff. But I do like this play to take the Floating Continent here. If you're confident you can handle it, everybody forgets about these fights, but you take a bunch of fights on the way in and then actually on the way out before the Narapa spot. You've got, 4 bosses, so it can really help boost your level. And you get a couple pieces of guaranteed progression and 1 more potential progression. So it's very good to help sort of push you through the rest of the seed.
Yeah, not only that, but this fight right here is a juicy fight with a lot of XP. And I think this is the one we see twice, or is this the first time we've seen this one? I'm not quite sure. There's one of these fights where you fight them twice, and the other one you fight once. Unfortunately, the Walk of Shame out of Esper Mountain there for Yakko. I think we have some warp stones, but it just depends on what shops you go to. Usually, when you open up the seed and you see the things that our runners have seen, you you just go and you don't hit up shops, right?
Yeah, I mean, especially item shops, because, you know, basically there you're going for the warp stones at this point, because there's not a whole lot else you need, unless maybe you need Phoenix Downs.
All right, so Yakko did show us that there are no or rather there is an Esper, excuse me, at the auction house. So if we need to go get some shiny stones at the end of the seed, and we have some cash left over, remember to Zen Thief, which is a Thunder Shield. So we can buy an Esper, but it's at the auction house this time around. And we've got Flying Grabby Pasta for Saberwolf here at the first boss of the first floating continent.
Yeah, meanwhile, looks like everybody is doing the realm check simultaneously, so a lot going on everywhere else.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think we've seen all of the checks, right? We've seen all of them, and the only character we've gotten is Strago out of Veldt Cave, right? We've seen all Locke's checks. Oh, no, I'm sorry, we haven't seen Floating Continent yet.
Yeah, so there's Floating Continent, and then there's also Kefka Narsh if you wanted to do that.
That's right. I pushed that check out of my mind forever.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty much consensus among the community is people, unless you have Mog or Terra or something for Kefka Narsh, that seems to be something people put off quite a ways, especially, you know, since you have to divide your party, so not everybody's getting experience. It's a long walk in and out. Just not a great check unless you really have to.
All right, well, yeah, so really tough bosses here from our early checks. We've got Poltergeist here at the Floating Continent. However, Fixed Dice Offering cuts through the very high physical defense that our spicy friend, our Satan's Poultry, has. And that's a huge fight there, easily dispatched from Saberwolf. Grabbing the Aura Lance, and ooh, ow! There is Gao hanging out on the Floating Continent there. A little X-Magic health Gao. No thanks. Can we throw this Gao back?
Yeah, I mean, X-Magic is one of those things that it feels like it should be really good, but practically speaking, for most of the seed, if you're going to be able to cast a really good spell, you know, you'll end the fight pretty quickly, so you don't really need that second cast.
Yeah, it's very slow in casting multiple spells, and you can be countered in between casting the first spell and casting the second spell. So it's kind of rough. It doesn't really help out with, you know, well, what happens if your caster dies due to a counterattack? Then you only get one spell anyway.
Absolutely, but Gao does open up a couple more checks, most notably the Veldt check, which is dried meat, very guaranteed some kind of progression, so I would be surprised if that's not the next check that Saberwolf does once they finish up the continent here, because it is a very fast, guaranteed progression check.
That is provided they find the dried meat, right? And usually what happens is if you don't find it in your initial looting route, then it becomes way more difficult to find because you're going to off the beaten path shops here. Nobody War has Merton online. We just saw him just basically microwave the entire screen. So Vargas and the Ipoos stood no chance. So that's another Esper for them there. Oh no, I'm sorry. That was Strago at the Veldt Cave spot. So they get their fourth character. And does he just turn around and go into Burning House here?
I mean, with Strago, while you're right here, I I normally hate Burning House, but you're saving yourself a decent amount of time being right here. So
dried meat. World of Ruin Famasa for that dried meat. And Rexol is the middle boss here, which is not great for a offering party, huh?
No, especially since there are other. I don't know if Saberwolf has learned any of the good magic yet.
Well, I think the only tier 3 spell we know is Fire 3, and you can't use that on Rexol. And Rexol has very high magical defense anyway in there. Yeah, that's why you don't use fire on this guy, even though it seems like that would work. All right, so we are going to get a Burning House, a Casa del Fuego play here from Nobody War. Let's see if he can dodge a flame. Can he dodge? Oh God, these are going to be awful encounters in here. So, whenever I go into Burning House and I see encounters like that in here, I usually just reset and I'm like, I hope that this is not the way through the scene, because I don't want to have to run from these fights every time.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a bunch of warp stones or smoke bombs, it's not too bad, but I think Nobody War only had like 3 warp stones to start, and you don't really want to run completely out of them because you might need one.
So there are 2 different sets of mobs in the Burning House. So the Harpies, thankfully, are the other set here for Nobody War. Much better off. And he's through basically the hardest part of the Burning House now. Unfortunately, that's just a Minerva there for Saberwolf. And we don't need any more defensive pieces of equipment, do we?
Oh, and Gig of Ram. I was about to say this is an interesting play early, but that is Fenrir.
Yeah.
Going to be about 20 grand.
Hey, listen, if you got the money and you're here, you might as well.
Oh.
The resident wolf himself. And there you go. That is Calmness Protection for Gig of Ram. So he got Starlet out of Phoenix Cave, which people probably won't get. And then he just got Fenrir out of the auction house, which people also probably won't get. So we'll see if either of those have an effect on what's going on here. We'll see what that Fenrir has. Although with the other Espers we've seen, oh my goodness.
Mag power +2. That is very good.
All right, so that one at least is an impactful Esper, whereas the other one, not so much here. All right, Saberwolf making his way to the 3rd part of the floating continent. So this will be either a character or an Esper at the end of it here. Nobody War just got clapped right at the end there by the level magics right before the boss room. So he'll be fighting the boss of the Burning House here. And then Yakko Wacko decided that the floating continent's the place to be. So they will get Gao as well. And whatever other goodies are up here. Right. It is 2 cranes in a house. No wonder why it's on fire and crumbling.
Yep. Meanwhile, Saberwolf finding the Welk at the very end of the floating continent. This is a nice boss to find because it's usually pretty easy.
Yeah, unfortunately, with your fixed dice offering, it's not great when you hit the shell by mistake. But thankfully, he's got low enough HP that this is not a problem. And we'll see what the reward is here at the end of the floating continent. It is Shout for Nobody War at the Burning House. That's nice for tier 1 to petrify everything on the screen. And hey, there's Sabin. All right, so we got 2 characters at the floating continent there. Sabin with lore, so I don't expect that will come into play, really.
Lore with garbage magic stat.
Well, listen, we got 2 characters on Floating Continent, and that's really what you hope for, right? When you go up to Floating Continent is, I'm going to put in some work now so that I can expand my seed later. So
yeah, absolutely. And the other nice thing about Sabin is he's got a bunch of nice checks that are pretty quick. You've got even the peakable train, if you want to say, or gamble on that once you do the camp here and do falls. So you got a lot of options.
yeah, a lot of very quick options, all within proximity of one another. However, Saberwolf decides, let's go to the Veldt. And gets quite an annoying enemy to be on the Veldt here. Meanwhile, Nobody War, just having finished at Burning House, now dipping his toe into Ebbett's Rock. This is another Esper. And I think
No, I ran away because I forgot it didn't have any dried meat.
Yeah, I mean, that fight stinks, but I can understand running away from it because it's just an annoying fight. Not having dried meat, however, is a bigger problem. Because you can't get the reward at all if you don't have your dried meat. You can't have any pudding unless you eat your meat, right? Okay, that is Gao here. For Yakko.
And that is the one disadvantage of getting all that power early is nobody has seen a lot of, none of our runners have seen a lot of shops. So if you haven't happened to run across dried meat, you might have to do a lot of hunting for it.
Yeah, and that always feels like a waste of time. It just feels like the clock is perpetually ticking away.
Oh, meanwhile, Yakko Wacko finding the Gigantos they've been looking for.
Hey. If Strago can stay on his feet here, there we go. This will be some good XP for Yakko Wacko. Meanwhile, Saberwolf pivoting to one of Sabin's free checks here. Hey, that's Go-Go.
Yeah, and the other nice thing is I don't know if Saberwolf has actually been to this part of Zen yet, so can probably route in the check if they haven't bought something yet. And I don't know if you've been there in the World of Runes. That could also be a check for dried meat if you have not been here yet.
Well, we do know, at least when I was paying attention, we did find some dried meat in World of Ruin Pamasa, but Saberwolf has not done the Veldt Cave check yet in order to be warped down there to get it. So he might not be getting that dried meat for a while. Meanwhile, Gig of Ram, as we've just mentioned, Strago, here he is. And we have Go-Go outside the collapsing house. So Saberwolf's already at 6 characters and just has one shiny stone to his name, unfortunately. So does this sort of change what you do in terms of your route for the rest of the seed here, Rooster, now that you have your character requirement?
So it does a little bit from the standpoint that the way the fill algorithm works is that it tends to preference new characters leading to more new characters. So like that Go-Go, he only has one check, but logically it's slightly more likely that it would lead to more characters. So I would intentionally try to go to my characters that I've had sitting around for quite a while. So, if there's anything from, for example, Lock that you've had sitting, Realm, etc., which appears to be what Saberwolf is doing right here.
Yeah, and this is, of course, the one check that has the character at it. So we'll see if he decides to still take it, even though he does not need Strago. I probably would leave the old man there and bark up a different tree. Right? We got tons of checks between Sabin and both of Gao's checks, which we haven't seen at all.
Maybe, though, I don't know. I know people like to treat this as a peekable check, but you have to run through something like 75% of the thing before you can see it. So I wouldn't blame people who follow it out. Sometimes I'll follow it out even if I don't necessarily need the character.
Yeah, so as you just saw on screen, we are having some additional Worlds Collide action. On RPG Limit Break, we're going to have a showdown of epic proportions between Physics Shebang and Judge Joe. Not today, Sunday, but the following Sunday, so 1 week from today, 8 p.m. Eastern time. So that'll be basically for whomever is going to get first place in Elixir B. Whoever wins that race will probably get it. We also have our Wednesday speed gaming slot at 8 p.m. Eastern. And we are going to be doing a 100% community race, which means we're going to be getting through everything. Got to touch them all, as they say. That'll be December the 27th at 2 p.m. Eastern time. So those are some upcoming events for you here, as well as a year in review show that we are still scheduling. So all fun stuff from the Worlds Collide community. Come follow us on Twitch if you aren't there, or if you'd like to watch everything later, you can go subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. All right, so Saberwolf now going to all of the checks which we've seen from our other runners already. This will be his second Esper Siren, and everyone else is heading to the floating continents as well. It seems like we've run out of places to go, right? Because Fnatic's Tower was an Esper, Evet's Rock was an Esper, and so was Burning House. So the floating continent is the only way through the seed not named Kefka and Narsh. So this is the place to be, and that's why our runners are here. Alright, so who is this? This is Weldt here at the end of the floating continent for Yakko Wacko. So they will have their 6th character with Sabin as well. And we're going to get some new checks, some new 411 here from Saberwolf. We can peek the Phantom Train. So we can go into the caboose and see what the reward is. Now, if this is also a character, then we kind of already know where 2 other characters are, and then Skip starts creeping in the mind. Alright, so that is Odin. Ooh, that is a juicy Esper there. Magic power +2 as well. Alright, and Sabin at the end of the floating continent for Yakko. So, funny thing is, there's some dried meat on the Phantom Train shop. Bailing Saberwolf out.
Yeah, and that is a great place to find it because that shop costs you basically no time since you walk right past it.
Yeah, so for those of you that don't know, it is the second ghost here as we're doing a little wedding procession or something. Get out of my way, please. The second ghost in both of these first 2 cars is an item shop, and you can find some goodies there like dried meat, and I think he also bought a couple of X potions as well. Really nice to do. We do have a bunch of elemental shields, which makes that not as good as if you didn't have any curatives at all. However, it's always nice to have X potions anyway, in case, Train comes out, then you can't cast a spell on yourself to heal yourself, right? Alright, so there's Gal for Nobody War.
Yeah, I believe Nobody War is one of the runners who went to Thamasa and has already bought the dried meat.
Alright, so people have pretty high levels now. Nobody War is at level 30. That's what happens when you do all of these longer checks like Owsers and Burning House. Alright, so Yakko Wacko going through the collapsing house, checking out some of these monster in the boxes, and unfortunately, we don't want either one of these, so we're going to get the heck out of here. And what is the boss at the Phantom Train do? Not a good time. Although we do have Fire 3 and Merton. So, I think, however, Saberwolf just came from Esper Mountain, right? So he doesn't have that Fire 3 learned yet. Alright, Spicy Chicken is down for Gig of Rams, so they're going to get their gal. And Yakko Wacko just finished up the Collapsing House and bought the Tzenthief Esper. Tzenthief Thunder Shield. So that's 2 checks there for them.
Yeah, meanwhile, Gig of Ram on their side, I believe, just saw them learn Merton, so Gig of Ram is ready to rock and roll as well.
Burn the world down. The seed. Yeah, so this is one of those instances where if you fade Floating Continent, you kind of got railroaded into it, right? But also you could have had a big advantage in terms of characters and checks. However, you also, like Saberwolf, if you went there early, you missed out on some of these espers that have now powered up your team, right? So it's a bit of a conundrum there. All right, so Yakko Wacko is going to Imperial Camp, so this will be new information for us, I believe. I don't think we've seen this yet.
No, I believe it was Saberwolf sort of stopped there and then decided to go check other things first.
Yeah, it makes sense. You can actually peek Imperial Camp after you fight the first fight. But Phantom Train, you know exactly what you're going to get in the caboose, so it makes sense as to why you would do Phantom Train first and then head on over if necessary.
Yeah, and I guess Yakko Wacko is really looking for that second offering because they, excuse me, they keep going for all these monster in a boxes.
Yeah, so Pugs is also a pretty nice fight. Can drop up to 3 Minervas. And with Fixed Dice offered, geez, this is not a problem here. Alright, so Baron Falls is Tunnel Armor, so this should not be a problem for Saberwolf. We'll see what's at the bottom here when he gets out. Meanwhile, Nobody War is on the last legs of the Floating Continent, and Gig of Ram is at the Atma weapon spot. So I guess now would be a good time at 45 minutes into the seed. Make sure you go give our runners a follow on Twitch if you are enjoying the action here. They deserve your viewing. Meanwhile, that is some soldier on soldier action for Yakko. So this is going to be either an Esper or an item here. And let's see what Saberwolf washes up into. Minerva, unfortunately, in the middle spot there. Hey, that's Tirado. Alright, so we just need 5 more. Hey, there's Fire 3 and Break. So I don't think we've seen any instant death spells yet besides Break. I think someone had a Cursed Ring before, if I'm not mistaken.
That's the only one. I mean, I believe Saberwolf also has Odin, and I believe at least Nobody War has Shoat, which is quasi-instant death.
Just on tier 1.
But I don't think we've seen Doom or X-Zone or the actual spells yet.
We'll keep our eyes out for that because all of our runners definitely have Siren. Gig of Ram has Fenrir from the auction house. I haven't seen Life 3 show up yet, so that'll be interesting for later on. And we need some instant death as well. Although with learning Merton, that pretty much takes care of tier number 1 without a problem because both the face weak to fire and the long arm weak to wind get doubly damaged by that. So Merton is really nice to have for tier 1.
Meanwhile, Yakko Wacko finding a nice dead check there with a force shield. Not really what you want at this point, especially when already having tons of good shields.
All right. Yeah, so that's... What haven't we seen from... We still haven't seen both of Gal's checks. We don't know what's at Mount Cults either. So, still some opportunities for Saberwolf to get those Espers, but he's running out of choices here rather quickly.
Yeah, and then there's also Gogo's check, though. Man, that at this point, when you don't need any of the items, that is not a great check. And
do we have warp stones? That's always the other That's always the other question, right? You
Yeah, I know
definitely don't want to walk out of there.
Yeah, I know at some point Saberwolf had 3 warp stones, so they know where they're at, but I don't know if they've been back to buy more.
All right, so Yakko is in Phantom Train now. Did pick up their Esper in the caboose. Same thing with Nobody War here, and we'll see where Gig of Ram decides to go. We do have Tritalk Cliff, so looks like Saberwolf is going to head up there. We can't get the Umaro check without Umaro, but we still at least have a Esper item check at the top of this, plus a dragon. So this is a really nice spot to go find both some progression and some levels.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody showed us the peekable part of what's in Umaro's check, because you can only peek that in the World of Balance, and unless you happen to be going up there with Mog or Terra or for Kefka and Nars, there's no real reason to walk up that extra screen.
Yeah, and I also know Saberwolf does not have any of the Ragnaroks either, so maybe he did not go. When you have a lock start, going to the World of Balance Narsh, usually it's like a 50-50. Some runners will do it, and some runners, because you could loot all of the chests in the World of Ruin, they don't even bother. So a bit unfortunate that he did not go and see those Ragnaroks there, because I think most of our other runners have them at this point.
Yeah, and one thing to note in chat, one of our runners pointed out, or Fiery Blizzard, who I believe is also in this group, pointed out that Fanatic's Tower is an Esper, which Yakko Wacko has shown off, but again, that would require the Strago that Saberwolf does not have.
Yeah, all of Strago's checks, I believe, were Espers, so Strago playing nice this seed with Shiny Stones. Oh, there's a Cursed Ring. I thought I had seen one earlier, but that's definitely one there now. All right, Nobody War getting through Chad there, so that'll be their Esper that they can take onto another check.
Yeah, and I do have to think Saberwolf, I believe, saw that Strago and abandoned it. So, like, if you're going to make that play, you are going to commit to, hey, I'm going to assume I don't need Strago until I'm forced to go back and get it.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, oh, look at this. Nobody War getting some exercise in, too. Walking over to Barren Falls. Gotta love it. Our runners today have been globetrotting all over the world here on foot. Yeah, I think 9 times out of 10 you make that play, right? Because Strago's checks are normally very long, very lengthy, and if you already have 6 characters, you really don't need that. However, there also is the flip side, right, where it's another check just to get Strago, and you get the check added to your check account for skip potentially, right? And then if you run into a situation like you had said, where you actually do need to go pick him up because you run out of checks to get your requirements, then you feel even worse about going back there.
Yeah, because I mean, when you make a play like, resetting out of stuff, the general consensus and the general expectation that most people follow is like, hey, if I'm gonna make a play like that, you commit to it and be like, I'm deciding, because if it's there, and I have to walk back to that, I'm probably in trouble already.
I'm in danger. Nobody
Exactly,
War at the bottom of the falls here. This was that was an Esper Torado. Oh, it was Imperial Camp that was dead, right?
Yeah, Imperial Camp was a force shield.
All right. Oh, that's gonna hurt too. Flame Shield at Tritalk. We do have the Warp Stone at least. Does help with Merton.
I mean, at this point, if you're Saberwolf, do you consider trying the go-go check? I mean, it's not a great one, but...
Oh boy. We're going into Phoenix Cave instead. Yeah, I have Warp Stones. The Zone Eater check is not terrible. Although, like I said, the options that we've got now are what? Mount Cults, Phoenix Cave, and Gau's stuff, right? We go through the Serpent Trench and the Veldt, had dried meat, right? So
I will
not other great alternatives.
I will hot take while we're VODing this. The reason why I went those 2 checks because I was trying to get Merton online with a dragon loop in. So that's why I was focusing on those things. It just didn't work out for me on the Espers, though.
Yeah, well, this one is an Esper. The Tritok Cliff, unfortunately, wasn't. But yeah, that's a great point. If you want to get Merton online, go hit those dragons, which is just what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, and the one thing to note is that Phoenix Cave, like, it feels like it takes forever, but if you actually skip all the chests, it's not quite as long as it seems.
Yeah, there's just a lot of party switching, and every time you go back and forth between one party member and the next, it's a couple second transition between them. So it's way longer than it definitely needs to be here. All right, so Yakko has got. They're putting their party down to 3 here, so it looks like we've got the Veldt check there for Yakko, and then on the bottom left we have the other Gao check. This is the Serpent Trench, so some more new information for us that we have not yet seen. Serpent Trench always feels like a slog later on in the seed, just because the encounters in here are super easy, and you just are like, get me through this as fast as humanly possible, please.
But you do get to see the hottest new technology of the early 1990s, the Mode 7 underwater sequence.
That is true. Supreme graphics. All right, so Nobody War taking the left path here and running away from the fight because, yeah, he's basically ready for KT. There's no point in continuing to fight in here. All right, so Yakko Wacko's back on the Veldt. This time, not just Lobos. And let's see what the dragon is here in Phoenix Cave. And it's vanilla. Madeline is the Esper there at the end of the Serpent Trench, and Celeste is on the Veldt.
Yeah, that hurt.
Oh, yeah, and that especially hurts if you're in Saberwolf's position, because when you need Espers, Celeste is probably the best character for Espers, because you got the Magitech Factory, you've got the very quick free check in where she's kidnapped, so Celeste is a very good pickup here for Yakko Wacko, very good for them.
And now they're one away from character skip, is that correct? Yes. However, we have no idea where a 9th character would be at this point. Not at Strago's stuff, and not at Sabin's stuff unless it's Mount Colts, and I think Zone Eater is the only other place that we haven't seen really, right?
I don't think we've seen Final Kefka, though at this point you would have to be very desperate to go to Final Kefka. Or not Final Kefka, Narsh Kefka.
Kefka at home, Kefka. All right, well, in case you didn't find them in the World of Balance, that's a Ragnarok there at South Figure of Prisoner check, and this is going to be a Esper, thankfully, for Saberwolf, so we'll put that on the board for him.
I mean, frankly, at this point, with Fixed Dice offering, already having at least one Ragnarok plus Merton everywhere, that Ragnarok very well might be just a stat stick.
Yeah.
Very good stat stick, though.
All right, so really good heads-up play here from Saberwolf is putting his party down to 1 on the forced party reform on the way out of the Phoenix Cave, so he is going to give us the Zone Eater check. The real MVP here, giving us all the fun checks we haven't seen yet. And Yakko Wacko is taking that Celeste right to Magitech Factory, like you said, Arusta. And we'll see if he decides to go all the way through. because the first 2 checks are Esper item and they're pretty quick. The third check is a bit longer, but it's guaranteed to be either a character or an Esper. And I think if you're Yakko Wacko, you don't care which one you get, right? Because you're either getting unlock or you're getting skip.
Yeah, I think in Yakko Wacko's position where you could still use the character or the Esper's final Kefka, you go through because it's guaranteed progression. And even though it feels like it takes a while, and it kind of does, you know, by the time you bail out, fly somewhere else, go to, I don't know, Zone Eater or whatever you're going, that time adds up too.
Yeah, I mean, once you're at Magitech, you know, at the tubes room, if you will, it's not that long of a check. The problem is doing the other 2 checks and the walk to the first one, plus all the third one, makes it seem like forever. Right? So. Alright, so that's Celeste there for Gig of Ram, and oh my goddess. Shouldn't be a problem with Merton and Ultima and Fixed Ice Offering. Oh, jeez. Calm down here, Strago. I mean, Shadow. That was a ridiculous amount of damage. That's wild.
Meanwhile, Gig of Ram about to do the same thing with this Magitech Factory check. Again, makes perfect sense when you start with what they're sitting at 7 Espers.
Alright, what's in the Zone Eater? It is another Esper. So Saberwolf is getting his shiny stones here. Now, he just has to do the Serpent Trench, right? That was another one. And what else does he have left that we haven't seen him do? Auction house? Ugh.
I mean, frankly, at this point, when you're at 6-7, I would do the auction house. Because I know, like, yeah, it's RNG, but you get told that it's an Esper when you walk in, and that's going to be quicker than just, you know, randomly trying to pull stuff.
But Saberwolf never does auction house.
Sorry, Saberwolf. Wah, wah. Meanwhile, hiding in the Hide Knights here, I think this is the second boss, and I completely missed what the reward was at the first boss.
It was Carbuncle, another Esper. So actually, as soon as Nobody War decides, I mean, I understand they're checking this one first, I would imagine getting the Ragnarok, and then I imagine Nobody War is going to go to Magitech Factory as well, and that will put them at 9 Espers. Gig of Ram will come out with 8 Espers once they finish off this boss here. So Gig of Ram and Nobody War both could get into the tower very, very quickly here.
Alright, so unfortunately Saberwolf is at the Imperial camp. We'll see a soldier sprite and we'll continue on, but this is just a force shield. Nobody War getting just the Ragnarok. He will get his go mode ostensibly if he goes to the Magitech Factory. Now, question for you, Arusta. If you have 18 checks, are you going to try to do more of them in order to get your skip, or are you just going into the tower at that point?
I think at the levels they're at, I would just go into the tower at that point. If I was maybe like low 30s, where you could justify, well, I could do a couple quick checks, maybe take a dragon, something like that, like just something to get through there. Maybe you do it, maybe go full right, something like that, but not when you're already level 38, gonna be 40 by the time they beat this boss.
Yeah, and right, there's Merton everywhere, right?
Yeah.
All right, so it was a dead check for Yakko. I think that was a dragon horn here at Magitech number 2, which would have been nice earlier in the seed because we found Dragoon Boots and we found an Aura Lance for Poltergeist, right? But now we already have our builds. There's no point in switching over.
Yeah, I mean, and someone has natural jump, but at this point, yeah, you don't want to. No real point in changing over.
All right, Nobody War, meanwhile, is unfortunately going up to the Tritox spot, so this would have been a really nice play if this was an Esper, but we know it's an item, and that's just unlucky. However, he will be at probably 19 checks when he's done with this, so then that would make me even want to go for skip even harder at that point instead of just bailing out.
Yeah, I mean, ditto for Yakko Wacko. Well, Yakko Wacko very well might get skipped just from getting a character here. But they'll come out of this at 19.
Alright, so Hyde and the Hyde Knights is down for Gig of Ram. Will not get their go mode here.
So here's the interesting question. If you're Gig of Ram, do you go for it? Because we talked about it for Yakko Wacko where the character still helps you. What about if you're Gig of Ram?
That's a great question. He is not going to continue onwards. I'm cool with that. I would have to see what checks they have left to do. That's hard because we know Fanatic's Tower is not a character, right? It's an Esper. He doesn't know. Yeah, he doesn't know that Collapsing House is go-go. So this is just a little unfortunate for them. A little bit of a hiccup here, having go-go. And I don't know if he saves, so you can't really reset out of this check. And I'm not going to watch it because I'm going to start to get motion sickness. But Nobody War does pull the Flame Shield there. Saberwolf off to mount Cults. So this will be new information for us. And that was Atma at the end of the minecart there. So that's boss number 1 for Yakko Wacko. And we're going to see what the reward is here for Yakko before he fights boss number 2. Oh boy. We have character number 9 there. So that'll be Kefka Tower skip for Yakko Wacko. Unfortunately, he still has to get 2 more Espers.
Yeah, Terra does open up a couple quick checks, though. First thing I would be doing is I would be sprinting over to check the very quick peekable check in Mobiliz. And then maybe if you want to go up in World of Balance Narsh, see if you can do Welk plus Kefka Narsh.
That is a good call. Oh, dead check Dragonhorn there for Saberwolf. Yick. Well, Saberwolf was definitely going to get skip. Because he'll need at least 2 more Espers, which will put him at 21 checks. And from there, you just need 1 more to get your skip. Yakko Wacko, meanwhile, is going to World of Balance Narsh. So we can peek this Welk check here. And then, as Arusta mentioned, we can continue onwards to Kefka at Narsh, and we get teleported back down now, thank goodness. And this is not a character. So this might be the right path here, finally. Everybody is so close, Arusta. They're so close to go mode, but nobody has gotten it yet.
Yeah, I think Gig of Ram is in a good spot to get it. Pretty quick.
He's going the wrong way, though. This is not going to get him in go mode either. Man, it's like if they knew what we knew.
Oh, there's another one. There's Alexander. So Yakko Wacko at 8 Espers.
Good heads-up play here, picking up the next check there. Super easy to go grab that check, and it does count towards your skip.
Yeah, and I mean, even though we're already in a good spot for equipment, Minervas are good enough that, when you're doing your final equipping, it's worth still equipping it, even though you've already got decent elemental protection.
All right, so Nobody War will get his go mode here after this boss. Finally, we have somebody with go mode on the horizon. Saberwolf, meanwhile, is going to grab Celeste here from the Veldt check.
Yeah, though I would note, however, that since Nobody War does not have skip, we'll see if they go to get it. This race is closer than it seems, even though Nobody War is going to get skip a couple minutes before either Yakko or Gig.
Yeah, because you're right, because he's got to do a couple more checks here.
Yeah, because either do a couple more checks or take an extra 3-4 minutes walking up the tower to the statues.
All right, so Yakko Wacko did walk out, I think, of Narsh. We did not see what Kefka at Narsh is.
Yeah, Yakko just got the 2 checks in the Welk and then bailed.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. You have no idea what is up at Kefka at Norsh. And it's a bit of a longer check, even though you do get teleported down, because you have to split up your party, you got to watch the cutscene, you got to fight the boss, you got to watch another cutscene. It's just, it takes a while. Alright, so after this goddess fight, Nobody War should have their go mode. Yes, a question from the chat about the auction house. There was an Esper at the auction house, and it was Fenrir. And only Gig of Ram has Fenrir. And I don't think we have seen any other Calmness Protection Arista. Am I right or am I wrong?
I don't think so.
So no Life 3, no Golem.
And I'm also just going to say that, like, yeah, I don't think we have not seen Phantom. It's floating around somewhere, I'm sure, but... And this is actually one thing, like, since someone brought up the auction house, this is a case where, like, with Yakko Wacko already having Skip being at 8 out of 9, the auction house always feels like it takes forever because it's RNG. But if you'd gone there in World of Rune and just bought out the place, you would probably already have that 9th Esper. Like, it's one of the ones that it's deceptively faster than you might assume.
So, I was recently talking on my own live stream about how I stopped doing Mount Cults in races because even though it's not an Esper, or rather, even though it's not a dead check, the past 4 or 5 times I've done it, it's been not a Esper or a character. It's always been an item. And this seed has been full of dead checks, but the fact that Mount Cults is again a dead check here just reinforces my recency bias with my unscientific data that I have.
Yeah, meanwhile, Nobody War coming to get this extra check here. I think that makes sense. Like, from already being in Magitech Factory, going from first check to second check, that is probably the fastest check they could do right there. So that makes a lot of sense. And then maybe you just take a dragon or something on your way out. I can't remember if Nobody War is one of the people who did the Opros Dragon or not, but that's a quick one. Or maybe just go to Final Kefka, who knows. Or excuse me, the full right in Kefka, something like that.
Yeah, because you could do the Atma spot, or you could do the other thing, the other.
Or
dragon.
I guess if you haven't bought the Esper, if that's what they're going for.
Yeah, so Zen Thief is super cheap in the World of Ruin, but they are going, oh boy, get out of my way, guards. Meanwhile, Gig of Ram, after getting several dead checks in a row, says, you know what? We're gonna hike it up a Fanatic's Tower here in order to guarantee our Esper at the bottom. So I like this. It always feels bad doing Fanatic's Tower, but you know that there is an Esper here, and you've already done your 23 checks for Skip. So let's just pull off the Band-Aid, rip it off. Let's just do it.
Yeah, meanwhile, Nobody War did get skipped through buying it there. So they are going to go straight to the tower, and at this point, you have plenty of power. No reason to do anything except take that skip and run with it.
All right, so Yakko Wacko going through the Serpent Trench here. They will get their go mode on the other side of this whenever they are finished with it, because I believe this is an Esper here at the end. Cat Hood at the top. That would have been nice earlier on in the seed when we were hurting for money to go buy some Ragnaroks, right?
Yeah, I think Saberwolf actually bought a Cat Hood somewhere earlier. I meant to call it out at the time during the initial looting, which, you know, that it's not a play that you see all that often, but if you see a Cat Hood, it can very well, especially if you get it early, pay off just in terms of the gold you get, especially if, like, in the seed, you know there's stuff you can buy that you want to spend money on.
Yeah, it will. I always sell everything for a Cat Hood because you will make your money back no matter what, basically. And oh my god, wow, it is a vanilla Magimaster at the top of Fanatic's Tower. Oh boy, thankfully we've got Berserk, so we can not only Berserk Magimaster, but we can also Berserk our characters with Ragnaroks. Oh man, imagine doing this like when you got Strago at the very beginning of the game. This would be incredibly awful.
Yeah. And then the other secret benefit, I believe, to doing Magimaster, I believe isn't his first elemental weakness to fire.
I don't think so. I think it's just randomized.
Okay.
Or rather,
it's
he
no
doesn't
weakness
have,
at all.
Yeah, he doesn't have an elemental weakness until he gets damaged.
Oh,
And
I
then
mean,
okay.
So once he gets damaged, then he puts the barrier up.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the unfortunate thing is, even if you berserk your characters with Magimaster's extremely high physical evade, swinging a Ragnarok is not a guarantee to actually hit him. As Saberwolf gets there, Kefka Tower skip there and decides to go through. No, decides not to go through. Okay, this is the right play because we know it's the right play. But objectively, I probably would have just done it. But this is good for him. This will save him time. Meanwhile, nobody war did. Go ahead.
Looks like maybe Saberwolf did not check the other Celis spot, which, yeah, this is much faster than going through the entire way. It doesn't help in this seed, but...
Yeah, this is just brutal. Meanwhile, SR Behemoth here for Nobody War on one of the other sides of the tower. I didn't see who the first boss in Kefka's tower was, so... Meanwhile, Yakko must not have skip. I must have miscounted his checks. So, shout out to Saberwolf for helping doing the restream and for Cheech for doing the tracking here.
Well, but Yakko should still have skip from the 9 characters, though.
Oh, you're right. So this is just a... I want to
just
learn
a levels or learning spells, yeah. Yakko is in chat, asking if he wants to say what you were doing. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, that was Kefka unlock right there. I miscounted. Or skip, rather. Oh, no, you're right. He has 9 characters. Duh.
Oh, okay. Yakko in chat. The last Esper that they picked up had Quick and trying to learn it. That makes a lot of sense. Quick is very useful against Final Kefka. Can help you skip some of the nasty counters.
Yeah, I definitely know that I have a blind spot for that particular spell. Saberwolf heading into the Opera House disruption to try and pull an Esper out of there. This is one of the longer checks now, and oh boy, it is Doomgaze. For Nobody Warren. Oh, a double kill! That is gotta hurt.
Fortunately, Gao, having done basically nothing, is at a completely different level, so managed to survive.
Yeah, so that's that. It gets kind of rough to try and will your characters back from the brink here. Alright, so Chad is telling us the first boss was Inferno, second boss SR Behemoth, third boss Doomgaze. Yikes, this is a ugly Kefka's Tower so far. However, the worst boss of all, though, was definitely the Vanilla Magimaster. That is hideous. Oh, and these they're Pluto armors. Okay, I thought this was the duelers here in Opera House rafters. Because that would be even worse. And Doomgaze doing Doomgaze things. Nobody War, unfortunately, wasting one of his X potions there on Realm. Meanwhile, Inferno here, dragging it out with Gig of Ram, casting that Fenrir in order to protect his characters from the counterattacks that come out from the arms. Yakko Wacko taking care of his business with SR Behemoth.
And Nobody War surviving the Doomgaze.
And now, yeah, they get their math check. All right, so Saberwolf getting kicked off by Ultros here. Let's see what the boss is at the Opera House. Yakko Wacko thankfully passes his math test here. And for Nobody War, he just has one more boss to go.
Yeah, and a nice subtle thing there, but using the tent rather than a revival. That makes sense because the tent gives you that auto revive, but Nobody War also only has, I believe, 3 or 4 Phoenix down. So in this case, the saving a Phoenix down is more important than taking the extra 5-10 seconds for a tent rather than a sleeping bag.
That's a good call there. That's a nice heads up play from Nobody War. I did not even notice that, so really good, astute observation there. Alright, so let's see who this last boss is in Kefka's Tower. Saberwolf there getting sneezed away. No wonder why he got COVID. And here comes the reward at the end of the Opera House. Please, let this be an Esper. And it's a soldier. And we got Umaro as our last boss there. Throw out your dabbing Yetis if you got him in the chat. And there it is, Ragnarok the Esper. So that'll be go mode for Saberwolf, and he will get to skip in at the statues. So we'll be a few bosses behind here. But oh boy, Hyperdrive coming out from SR Behemoth. He's going to get real angry at Gig of Ram here. Oh, that's a lot of Mega Elixirs.
All right, I think Saberwolf is pretty good. 5 Mega Elixirs. Should have some spares.
Ready for anything. Well, listen, not everybody went up to Fnatic's Tower for that Vanilla Magimaster fight that dropped the Mega Elixir, right?
Hey, I mean, if you're already there, spend that money.
Yeah, what else are you going to buy? Money is a resource, right? Use it. All right, second phase of SR Behemoth for Gig of Ram, and it looks like he was trying to... Oh, I thought I saw a tools user come out. Meanwhile, Yakko Wacko forgets his Moogle Charm here, and it's like one of the weirdest fights in the game where there's sprites that are layered on top of one another. Always interesting. Meanwhile, Nobody War stepping on the switches. He'll be our first person up to Final Kefka here. Oh, is that the case? Yeah, so one of the other runners of this week, Potion C, Fiery Blizzard, who is in first place in the division, their time was 1:18:52. So they must not have gone through the pitfalls that some of our other runners have gotten. Also, they are very good too. So it's probably a combination of those things.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the keys to this seed are getting Sprago early and doing Floating Continent pretty quick.
Yeah, for sure. Because there are a lot of dead checks, and you know, you can avoid them, sure, but it also makes your team stronger. But Giga Ram here in a bit of trouble against Doomgaze. Shadow went down, and then Celeste went down after picking Shadow back up. Yakko Wacko looks like they are trying to learn quick on multiple party members here, so that's why the Moogle Charm is off here. 10 magic points from these fights is pretty good, and there it is, Shadow learning quick. So he can now move on with his seed. And we got Nobody War here. Final Kefka. We got Aqua Weapons swinging from Locke. Celeste somehow made the final party. Yeah, with that Ragnarok. And then we have our casters with Shadow and Realm.
Yeah, and then also one thing to note is that Nobody War did use that Shoat for instant death on the long arm. Only works in tier 1, but does save you some time here.
Yeah, because tier 1 will punch you in the face and it will hurt. Speaking of hurting, that is Gig of Ram having to back out there of that Doomgaze fight. It's very hard to get out of the hole that you dig yourself, or that Doomgaze rather digs for you there, as his Shadow is level 45, so maybe take off the Moogle Charm and take a grind fight here, get onto a non-multiple of 5, and then be more ready to take on Doomgaze. Meanwhile, we have Umaro for Yakko Wacko eating a big blue bubble. Saberwolf here going to try and melt Doomgaze off the face of the earth. And Nobody Wars on tier 2.
Yeah, so the important things for tier 2, we'll probably see a couple espers here. Siren mutes the magic, and magic is the guy pointing to the left. Casts a lot of annoying spells and a lot of slow spells, like spells that waste a lot of time, excuse me. And then there's also Odin being summoned, this Adam Edge, which will instant kill. I believe it's the red girl in the center.
There it is. Nicely done. So that'll make this fight a lot easier. Instead of having to deal with 4 parts on this tier, you only now have to really deal with 2. And with Merton, you'll kill probably Tiger and Hit almost at the same time. And Magic has 40,000 or 41,000 HP, so he'll be left alive, and he won't counter with nasty things like Quarter if you have him. Locke there just wants to go after Magic anyway. Locke, did you not get the memo about what we're supposed to be doing here? Alright, so Yakko onto his Infernal fight. Gonna use that Thunder Rod. Really good heads-up play to know what's in your inventory. This is one of the tougher bosses, and in Kefka's Tower, your party is divided, so it's a bit more difficult, these fights. You might as well use every tool at your disposal here. It looks like we got Fixed Ice offering on Shadow, Atma Weapon offering on Locke. So a lot of quad swinging. But this also means, Arusta, that Nobody War doesn't have a lot of targetable damage, and that might be a problem.
Yeah, though I do think at this point, they do have, I believe, the Ragnarok that can do targetable damage. If you really get desperate, Flare does, and I believe they've got Ultima. Because the targetable damage is most important in Tier 3, just to make sure you kill the reviving part first. And that only has just about under 10,000 health, so a Ragnarok plus an Ultima cast does all you need.
Excellent point there. So we have a solution here for Tier 3. What we don't have is Calmness protection, so we're just going to have to pray to the RNGesus that we can make it out of here with most of our party intact. All right, Yakko Wacko is our second runner up to the switches here, and Saberwolf has one more fight to fight, just Inferno. Gig of Ram has one more boss to kill, which is Umaro. So we are still pretty tight here. Anybody's race, really. All right, Shadow, please hit the right target. There we go. All right, so that's probably Girl dead there from that Ragnarok swing, and now we have to be careful. We got to make sure that we know who we're going to be using to do the killing blow, so that this way we don't have Meteos followed by Calmness, that we just get to Calmness here. And hopefully this will be enough damage. No, it's not. Going to have to hope for some nice dice rolls here from Shadow in order to bypass the Meteo and Train phase. Those first two didn't do it, but those last two might there. And here it is. Oh, down goes Locke. Oh no, that's bad.
So that was, I believe, Nobody Wars Ragnarok user, or excuse me, Atma Weapon 8-hit user, and then the Realm with Merton and Ultima. It's not the characters you wanted to lose.
Ooh, yeah. So we do have Fixed Ice on Shadow, which is very RNG dependent. Celeste does have the Ragnarok, but also probably has a lot of magic power. It just depends. Did we teach her any decent spells here? We'll find out after this. Meanwhile, Gig of Ram stepping up to the plate now as well, as Yakko Wacko is getting started on Tier 1. Yeah, so I wonder, I know that Strago was in our party for a little bit, so we'll see if Strago has any juice in his tank left here for Nobody War.
Looks like he's at least got a cure spell, which will be nice if you don't have a Mega Elixir.
Yeah, that's really nice. Yeah, we don't want to control Fighting Kefka, we just want to kill him. Alright, so we do have some shields that we can break here. So we're not out of it yet. It's just this is gonna take a while. So our other runners are gonna start to catch up to Nobody War here, because this fight's gonna take a little bit. Ooh, here comes the hyperdrive, and that's not the character we wanted to see die. Oh my goodness. Out comes the Ultima. Do we have enough HP to eat this? No, we definitely do not. Oh boy. Wow. I think Shadow decided to crank up the dice rolls at just the wrong time there, unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean, fortunately, the parties are all set up, so you can go right back to it. But man, that is not what you want to see.
Yeah, losing probably your two biggest damage dealers with Locke and Realm didn't help. It's just, yeah. Normally, you don't expect to be doing that much damage with your fixed dice offering. You expect it to do, some decent damage. After you see the hyperdrive, that's when your alert goes out. Like, okay, let's do a little bit more damage before Goner. He'll do another hyperdrive, right? But let's get Goner going, and then we can do all of our other stuff. And unfortunately, we went right to Ultima, which is if Kefka gets under 10,000 HP, he'll counter with Ultima. So that's just, I guess, the bad thing about getting good dice rolls. Alright, so that means that Yakko Wacko is now pulled into the lead here. On tier 2. With our Ragnarok and our fixed dice offering as well. And it looks like Terra has made the final party, so that was a character we got really, really lean. Meanwhile, Saberwolf moving on up to tier number 2. Here comes Siren for Gig of Ram. Now, Gig of Ram is the only one of our runners, the Rooster, that has Calmness Protection. So even though they are a little bit behind Yakko Wacko in terms of, where they are in this tier, they have at least that good thing that they have hanging on to them.
Yeah, that can really help depending on how Calmness does. I mean, for example, we just saw Nobody War. If they'd gotten a little luckier and maybe Calmness had only killed one person or had killed somebody else, Nobody War probably would have already been finished with the seed. So that very much can swing the seed having that Calmness protection.
All right, so one of the things that I love about Worlds Collide is that it's not a key item hunt type of randomizer. It's a can you accrue what you need to kill Kefka kind of thing. And we have 4 different final parties here, right? I mean, they're mostly doing the same thing with Ragnarok, Fixed Dice Offering, Atma Weapon, and Merton, but we got different characters in everybody's party, which is pretty wild.
Yeah, and Yakko Wacko is in chat here since this is a vodcast and pointed out that while they were doing that quick grind, they were able to teach Terra a couple useful spells as well. So, that's 100 magic points to get quick, so Terra has learned some other stuff too, while someone was learning quick.
All right, so Nobody War already back up to tier 2. And we did see that his tier 2 definitely was very, very fast with his damage output. So we'll see if he can catch up here to our other runners. Meanwhile, I think Tools is still alive for Yakko Wacko, whereas this is the death of magic for Saberwolf, and he is on to tier number 3, surpassing our other 2 runners here. So making up this huge time, in spite of the fact that he was our last runner into Kefka's Tower. Alright, so I think Gig only has hit and magic left. Yakko Wacko taking out magic here as well, because this is the Dispel death counters. So they will be going up to tier number 3 here. And Saberwolf hit with the W win, but we saw him go out on the shopping spree. Daddy Warbucks here with the massive amount of Mega Elixirs. So he'll be able to not only heal his party, but, in the case of cranking out Ultimas, we'll be able to get that MP back to restore in our party as well.
Yeah, that is very, very useful. Because this is, not only do you get the health refill, but this is the kind of point where, especially if you're pounding out Merton or Ultima, this is about where you start running low on magic. So works really well.
Yeah, Merton thankfully got a pretty good roll this seed, only 68 MP. So it normally costs 80 to summon, and the MP cost is between 75 and 125 in vanilla. So we definitely got more towards the 75 here. Out comes Train, and this is where we might have some issues here with this party. I don't know if we've got a fixed dice offering, because fixed dice never misses. So the blind status doesn't matter. Out comes Medio, and unfortunately all of the queued up spells will go away, right, because of that Train. So we'll see how he digs out of that hole. Meanwhile, Yakko Wacko putting out huge amounts of damage with that fixed dice offering, gets a clutch block from Realm, so he surpasses Saberwolf onto tier 4 now. Also, what's up, Gar? Thank you for the raid. Come on in and hang out. You're at the very end where, it's very tense. Everybody's on the edge of their seat. Who is going to win? Out comes Calmness for Saberwolf, and Doggo Defense blocks that one for him. So both of the top runners taking their final 4 into Kefka here.
Yeah, meanwhile, Gig of Ram should be finishing off. There's the Medio phase, so Gig of Ram will be into the Calmness and final Kefka in just a minute here.
Ooh,
Nobody were a little behind.
Yeah, just getting the Fenrir out now. There have been times when I've forgotten to cast Fenrir because I've gotten so excited to beat down Girl. And here comes those big, fat, juicy dice rolls again from Shadow. Jeez. Oh my goodness. Wow. Unfortunately, we got the short lightsaber there on lock. Meanwhile, at the top of the screen, Yakko Wacko here going in with these fixed dice. And Saberwolf eating a Train will unfortunately have to waste a turn here, clearing out his statuses. But remember, he's got the Mega Elixir. Looks like Yakko Wacko did have one as well. And oh no, Realm goes down for Calmness for Nobody War, but thankfully Lock blocks the second one. Could you imagine if it was Lock and Realm down again? That would be insane. So Yakko did steal the Mega Elixir from Kefka. I did not see that. I must have missed that. So for those of you that don't know, you can actually steal a Mega Elixir from Kefka to use on Final Kefka after Fallen 1. Gig of Ram did not lose any of his party on tier number 3 up to tier 4, so they're going to start this off here. And we've got 4 Kefkas on screen at the same time, Arista.
Yeah, and all of them are, I think, at about the same level. Yakko and Saber are bit further, but at this point it's pretty much anybody's game depending on dice rolls and just who Kefka decides to kill on each screen.
Lock eats a hyperdrive for Yakko, so they're under 30,000 HP. Saberwolf, meanwhile, during the Goner phase, out come the shield throws. Nobody War here using that Ultima Atma weapon, offering to do a ton of damage. Gig of Ram blowing through with some Ragnaroks. And then here comes Quick, which is one of the spells that Yakko Wacko made sure that they learned on his party. X-Magic double Ultima here from Gao. I'm pretty sure this will do it here for Saberwolf if this connects here on the second Ultima. But Yakko Wacko takes it out from underneath him first there with that quick cast from Shadow. He is going to be your winner. Saberwolf with the Flash Pow Crack Pang is in second place here. With a 136.32, Yakko Wacko 136.23. That's Gig of Ram done as well, 136.43. That is a difference of, 20 seconds between our first and third runner here?
Yeah, Nobody War is in the Goner phase and just about to finish him off too, I assume.
Yeah, so here comes the dice rolls, and of course, Shadow delivers. Shadow, the dice, the MVP here for Nobody War. That is 2 quad 9 rolls in a row with the Thunder Shield. That should be it for Kefka here. And that is Crack Pow, 137.16. So get your GGs in chat for everybody. That was a 57-second difference between our 4 runners here on stream. That was incredible, Arusta.
That was quite a thing. We appreciate everyone watching. We are going to pull up the overall results here. As we mentioned, Fiery Blizzard did finish this off with a 118, primarily based on what they said in chat, through early going to getting Strago, getting the floating continent, and then also skipping some of the Gao checks, which took a lot of time for nothing. And then everybody else is pretty much tied here.
Whew. Yeah, so correction, 53 seconds. Math is hard when you're this excited. But as of now, in Potion C, Fiery Blizzard, again, like we said, did come in first place for this particular week. However, the exciting part was runners 2 through 5 there. And we do have Saberwolf and Nobody War, and they're going to be battling here along with Woo Bear, Yakko, and Gig of Ram. So Fiery Blizzard pretty much will be almost guaranteed promotion up to Elixir next season with the amount of points that he has left. We are in week 6, so there are still 2 weeks in order to gain some more points in order to potentially be in that second place slot that also is guaranteed automatic promotion up to the Elixir divisions. Yeah, so this was great. Thank you so much, Saberwolf, for doing the restream, cutting the VOD together for us to do our talkies over. Thank you, Cheech, as well, for doing some tracking for us. Really appreciate that. It is very hard to watch 4 screens at one time and click the buttons and count the numbers. So appreciate you doing that. Arusta, this was a lot of fun.
Absolutely, it very much was. And as we're showing here in some of the outro seeds, if you're not familiar with our YouTube page, go ahead and watch that as well. We really appreciate all the viewers here. We have a couple more weeks of Ultros League, and then probably after that, we will be announcing, of course, more Final Fantasy VI Worlds Collide. I think it's time for some tournaments or something like that might come out afterwards. Not sure about that, but I'm sure we'll have something. So if anybody's not familiar with it, it's just posted in chat, but you can go to ff6worldscollide.com. Go ahead, get started, join our Discord. As I mentioned earlier, there are a lot of people who are very willing to help you, if you're new or just, you don't feel like you need some improvement at the game. There's tons of people willing to help you. We VOD reviews, mentors, all that. So thank you very much for everyone for watching. You have any final words, Saber? Or excuse me, Swans?
Yeah, so we can turn it over to Saber, who is fighting off some COVID there. So appreciate you putting it on. And also appreciate the runners for allowing us to view the vodcast. So we can't have the races without their footage. So thank you so much to the 4 featured runners, Nobody War, Yakko, Wacko, Gig of Ram, and Saberwolf himself. Saber, you got any other final thoughts before we get out of here tonight?
No, not really. I mean, like I said in the chat there, I wish to find those Ragnaroks at Narsh. I mean, like you said earlier, it's like half the people go to Narsh World of Ruin, half people don't, and off the rip, and I'm one of the ones that does, because I'm like, I'm gonna get Terra, I'm gonna get Mog, I'm gonna get somebody else to get me going to Narsh and World of Balance anyways, and yeah, sometimes sometimes it gets you though. But yeah, the Esper Scramble 6, I think it was like 6 or 7 in 1. To like the 30-something, 40-something minute, that's what hurt me the most, I think. But yeah, no, I appreciate guys. 2 weeks in a row of races that were within 1 minute of the 4 of the runners. It's been pretty fun. It's been a ridiculously crazy season this year.
Yeah, we also had almost a tie in Mega Elixir this week. I had to time out a race. One person beat another person by 71 frames, so that's just barely over 1 second. It's 1.2 seconds. So unfortunately, that was not a tie, but it's still quite ridiculous when the margins are this razor thin here in Ultros League. It always makes it exciting to watch. So thank you to the crew for doing the show tonight. Really appreciate it, and I think that'll do it. We'll catch everybody later. Peace out.